Hello, 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 people, and welcome back to an episode of the USL Show. We are back, and it was an absolute blast. Hey, to all the people who reached out, by the way, to Danielle for filling in last week, thank you for being so kind. She killed it. She only had like an hour heads up, and you would have no idea. She is the best. Go show some love to the Super Show, and go show some love to Danielle. To someone who was here last week, Ryan, how are you?
Doing well. Yeah, it was a great show last week. Definitely go show Danielle a lot of love. And yeah, the first weekend of the Jägermeister Cup 2025 edition was this past weekend, and excited to dive into all of the fun matches of that weekend.
And to known Rhode Island supporters group member, now Rochester shirt wearer, John Morrissey. How are you, buddy?
Westchester shirt, remember? Where?
Westchester. What'd I
Let's correct
say?
the record.
What'd I say?
Rochester.
Westchester. They're all Chesters.
Well, courtesy of our friends at Raising Anchor, I've got some Jägermeister with me now. So shout out to them. Shout out to the Shot at Glory that we're all going to be taking today.
I will admit, I took a shot or two of glory before the game the other day. It was a fun time.
You know my hot take? Jägermeister gets too much of a bad rap. And we are not sponsored. We would love to be sponsored, but we are not sponsored.
Listen, Jaeger is not what people say it is. And okay, we're getting into the liquor hot takes. I also don't think Malort is as bad as people say.
I've never
It's
tried
not good.
Malort. I need to get on that bandwagon.
It's
I
not
have not
good.
tried either Jaeger or Malort.
There
So
we go.
Well, Ryan, when we go to Portland for their final Jägermeister Cup match versus Pittsburgh, seems like a perfect time for you to take your first ever shot at glory.
only if I can take the Jägermeister ball stand home with me. Somehow I will get that on the plane.
By the way, I may have made a promise that we can't keep today. I said on Soccer Down Here that we will stay live after the Portland Hearts of Pine versus Pittsburgh Riverhounds match. We will stay live after the show as long as Bob Lilly is still yelling on the field. So we may not be able to keep that.
Yeah, we don't have the stamina for that.
It's fine. Well, look, before we dive into whatever we're already getting into, I want to go ahead and thank our wonderful patrons. William Lamb, thank you for the support. You just joined very recently, so thank you so much. Will Owen, Sandy Lester, Ryan Smelter, Madcap Peel, Timothy Meadows, and Andrew Towsley, All the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NFResh 30, Tim Knox, Rion Lacara, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Selfer, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Wooder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. Thank you so much. Before we get into too far into this, the Pathway Classic kicked off and happened this week, where it's the USL Youth and USL Academy just has a big pathway. It's called the Pathway Classic. It's a big tournament for a lot of different age ranges and genders and stuff like that. And they all get invited to a big tournament. All the winners get invited to a big tournament later on this year, if I do remember correctly. And I just wanted to go ahead and give a shout out to Indy 11, Sweno FC, Kingshammer FC, Sun City, Indy 11 again, Sports Paradise Soccer Academy, Sweno FC once again, Indy 11 once again, Lexington SC, Charlotte Eagles, Staten Island Monarchs, and the Current FC. And I think I'm missing one. Oh, and Birmingham Legion WFC. Thank you or congratulations to all those people. Different age groups. They go all the way from U14 up to U20 in both men's and women's. Super cool. So congratulations to those young players.
Yeah, famously people from Indiana getting the job done in the USL. So you love to see it.
I don't know where Sweno is, but they like kind of cleaned up, and I've never seen them with League Two. or W League. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, did not have the name recognition there, but good for them.
Speaking of W League and League Two kick off this week, a lot of it's kind of the Western Conference stuff, but this still kicks off this week, so that should be an absolute blast. Apparently, every single match now is going to be streamed. That was with release highlights and all that kind of stuff will be posted. So if you're someone who's been looking to get into W League or League Two, check those out. You can check out the websites, and there should be actual stats and all those different kind of stuff being added now, which is very cool.
That's actually a huge step for the league in terms of the visibility and the scouting. I mean, I think we've seen USL League Two players especially make their way up, and obviously there's college tape on a lot of those guys. But maintaining that when it's directly within the USL ecosystem, that's a big deal for the league. And it makes someone like me, frankly, more likely to watch it. So great stuff from League HQ to get that set up.
I also just want to throw it out there. If there is any team, specifically Legion, I'm just going to throw it out there. I'll be more than happy to be your commentator. Don't let your live streams be empty. I am here. Please ignore the fact I'm wearing a Rhode Island kit. That's not important. So, a little bit of news. There's not too much this week. Nice. I'm sure like we'll do what happens normally every single week, which is like, I don't know, Pro Rel Part 2 is announced or something. I don't know. But Fort Lauderdale is officially going to League One, which is, we all knew that, but it's official now.
It's good to see it formally confirmed. I think that was the suspicion when this team announced their intention to come into the USL at the professional men's level. It makes sense to have some of that synergy with Naples down there. It also makes sense to maybe avoid a market that's somewhat similar to Miami FC, a level above. That'll get rendered moot at a certain point when Pro Rel comes into town. But for now, I think it fits the ambition of this team to get your foot in the door, build up, and then see where you go from there if you're Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, having the at least Naples area like as kind of that travel partner makes a lot of sense here, and especially for a South Florida market that's getting increasingly crowded with the number of men's teams that are just going to be in the area. It'll be very interesting to see how they kind of build into that League One confirmation of their place, and in the future for Pro Rel, we're going to see at least a lot of clubs consider League One as a viable option to kind of enter in at the pyramid, kind of moving into that 2027-2028 season.
There's a part of me, and I kind of joked about this, where it feels like USL saw that the Southeast was being very ignored by MLS and just massively overcorrected and just only put teams in the Southeast. So, I mean, as excited as I am about it, it's hard for me to get really stoked while seeing pretty much all of the West be ignored out unless you're from California. You know, that like northern West area. It's not the Midwest. It's not Pacific Northwest, like that area, like just outright ignored. It's just kind of tough to see. So that's still what I'm waiting for. But, you know, it's nice to see that Fort Lauderdale is doing this. We kind of assumed as much when they had the League Two announcement. It's like, okay, we're doing things here. So it's still nice. Just want to see them fill out the map a little bit more.
Yeah, and we've touched on this before, but it is a little bit tough when you think about how sparse parts of the western part of the country are. You love to see them building on the strength for now, but down the road, maybe more of California. I think Washington and Oregon can be promising. Really, the Rockies feel untapped in a major way. So it'll come as the sport gains more popularity, but I like the continuing emphasis on dominating the Southeast wherever you can for now.
Ryan kind of put some in our chat, but I'm just going to throw it out there because I want to do it really fast because we'll talk about the actual match later. But I want to give some props to One Knox, where Knoxville home. Ryan put SEC into the chat, by the way, into our chat. And so Knoxville famously has obviously UT, but they opened up their own stadium, and it's a combined stadium, baseball and soccer. And they end up breaking, I believe, the League One record, which is 6,378, which I really thought Richmond got close to that a few times. Maybe I'm misremembering here. But
I was surprised to see it be the record, but don't take away from One Knox there.
No, very cool for you to see that in Knoxville, area that was really untouched, and obviously Chattanooga is right there, but a largely untouched area when it comes to professional soccer in the United States. So to see them come out and support, that's really, really cool. And it's more or less my continuation of what I've said before. I don't think it really matters the venue that you play out necessarily for your team to bring in fans. Who is towards the top in attendance almost every single year? New Mexico United, right? Like, they not only is it a baseball stadium, the turf is horrible, right? There's so much about it that should not be ideal that people could say it's an excuse for them not to go, and they're pulling 10,000, 11,000 in matches. One Knox is sharing a baseball stadium, and maybe it's the shiny new toy, but they still showed out. If your front office puts in some work, really throws out the advertisement, and you're a good team, which One Knox is, and we will talk about that, people will come.
And if you were curious, 2022, Richmond had played Greenville in a match on October 15th that had 6,000 fans in attendance, which was the highest of that season, which they probably, if they're rounded off to 6,000, there's probably a few other fans that either weren't counted or they were rounding up there for around that number.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we'll get into One Knox later on the pitch, but everything they've done to build up to this moment, promote what's happening, really kind of do the grassroots thing that I think embodies the spirit of the USL and League One in particular. That's been nothing but special to see for that community. It's great for soccer in Tennessee to have them doing so well.
Do we ever talk about them offering the Tennessee jerseys, the number 8 Nico jerseys, that if you turn it in, you get One Knox jersey?
Yeah.
Did we talk about that? Okay.
Really good.
Yeah, I think Alex mentioned it on a previous episode.
It's awesome. Let's go ahead and move on. Hey, let's go to some Super League action. Why don't we? Where we are going to be discussing how the Zephyr and the Sun, they played. The Zephyr win 3-2. This was an awesome match, just straight up. It was a ton of fun. These are two of the hottest teams in the league. And we talked about this one last week. It was kind of a toss-up. We all kind of felt like this one could go either way. And you see that the Zephyr get off to a pretty hot start, and the Sun make it close towards the end, but not quite enough. Zephyr hold off just enough. Their defense remains just strong enough as it has all year long, and they're walking away with a 3-2 win. And that also sees the Zephyr tied on points for that 4th position in the Super League. It is as tight as can be right now.
Yeah, tight on points, but with games in hand on basically everybody, and with so much momentum from this match, sure, but over the past couple weeks, I think the thing that stands out here is Mackenzie Weinert not only scoring again, but getting the brace. It felt like she was on the precipice of doing something big for most of the season, and to have it come together like this at such an important time is awesome. I think this game is somewhat misleading, where you can look at the stat line and see Tampa Bay outshot Spokane 25-4, but it was 2-0 to the Zephyr by the time Tampa Bay really started to get rolling. Spokane controlled the game early. They defended well in their usual shape. The move where it's Ekic cutting inside, the 3 attacking players ahead of her really flow through that Sun defense, and then you get the through ball to Weinert. That was just gorgeous soccer. Everything about this from Spokane really inspires confidence that they can keep repeating these performances and go on and grab a playoff spot.
And if you're looking at Spokane's next 4 games to end off the year, their next 3 games in a row are against the teams currently outside of the playoff picture or alongside them. Lexington, Brooklyn, and DC in a row. That could very well be 9 points that they could take into the postseason as their final match of the year, and the match that I think everyone should have circled on their calendar on May 31st is against Fort Lauderdale, and that could very well be a decider on who gets in at that number 4 seed here for the playoffs. So it's definitely just all momentum swinging towards Spokane right now.
I think one thing for me, and we talked about her last week, but Amina Ekic, right now, has made a solid push at the very end of the season to be my MVP vote. Like, there's a lot of really good players that could be up for that position. Ekic is really working her way into it for me. And one thing that's been really impressive, you mentioned Widener, you mentioned Ekic. They start off on the wings. Sometimes they'll flip sides. They will give you different looks. Sometimes they'll just play in the midfield, just straight up centrally. They are so free flowing that they'll do their switch midway through the game, give you different looks, but they will tuck inside as well. They'll be a central presence. It's really interesting. It's hard to keep track if you're a defender on where do I track her? Where do I track her? They normally have her. Why do I not? It becomes overloads in the midfield, and that's how they've been winning a lot of games.
And it's something we've seen over the course of the whole season, even thinking back to August. But to have it come together like this, have them finally find the chemistry in a way that's punishing opponents, it makes Spokane that much more dangerous. And it's part of the reason why they've looked dominant lately.
And obviously, the big score line is you'll see that Carolina scored 5 again, 5-2 versus Fort Lauderdale. But I really don't want to talk about that one because I want to give some flowers to DC Power. We've been harsh on them all year long, but they get a win. And it was a definitive 1-0 win. Their defense for DC Power has not been bad this year by any stretch. I feel like almost every single match they play is unfortunately a 1-0 loss, right? It just feels like that's just everything they do. When they win, it's also 1-0. And that's what they get here with Brooklyn. Their defense is strong. They just don't seem to have the final end product, but they got it today, and that's all they needed.
Yeah, and this has been a team that's mostly played a back 3, back 5 system for the majority of the season. They felt like they had the structure nailed down, and it was just a matter of finding the relationships upfield. I'm not here to tell you this is the panacea. They've suddenly cured everything that was wrong with the attack. But you think about the way that in the 3-5-2, they were really finding the feet of Gianna Gorley and Yuka Kurosaki up top. That was really a difference maker. And yeah, some of it is just Brooklyn is lost in the sauce right now. They don't have the structure. They couldn't get the press right. But DC knew how they wanted to attack this team and executed on it. The goal they got was a really great example of counter pressure, then one-touch passing before Gorley gets in for the finish. That was emblematic of a game where DC, for one of the first times in the spring part of the schedule, felt like they were the superior team straight up.
Yeah, and 75% of the 4 wins that DC Power have on the year has been 1-0 scorelines. Kaylor, you had asked about their 1-0 defeats. That's been 6 of their losses on the year. And most shockingly, we got a DC Power win in the spring before we got a Brooklyn FC win in the spring. And on the other side, if you're looking at Brooklyn FC for their next 3 games, there is a very good chance that they could be ending the year without another win because you have Fort Lauderdale, Spokane, and Carolina to end off the season.
I mean, that's just brutal. I just, I don't want this to be a Brooklyn talking point fully because I do want to give DC Power their flowers, right? Like they came out, they've been executing their game plan executing their game plan. Like they've been very structured in the back. You mentioned that just this time too, right, John? Like they goes to this 3 back, they goes to this 5 back. They call it a 4 back, but left back really sits super deep, and it's just another 3 back system that their right back can push up a little bit more. It's one of those situations, but they've been structurally sound all year long. They just need someone to finish the ball. right? They can create chances. They can do it. If they can keep this kind of structure, I want to kind of go cross league a little bit. Does this not feel like a team that if they put some money in the pitch on the attacking side, that has the formula to be a Spokane Velocity, where they have the defense set, they just need someone to score the ball?
I think Spokane, in terms of the overall arc of how this team could develop year over year, I think that's viable for sure. I think Spokane has the clear leadership with what Lee Veidman is doing in a way where DC has lacked that factor, and that matters a whole lot to the success of your team. But in terms of like how the play style might change, I think that's a good shout.
All right. Okay, Brooklyn. It does need to be talked about just a little bit. What can you say at this point that we have not reiterated legitimately every single week since January started? Because the reason we keep talking about it, there's only 8 teams in the league, and when they're bound to have the same conversations. I kind of hate to say it, but going winless after being top of the league, and I don't mean to take shots at our good friend Phil, but like when we talk about El Paso's hot start, like 5-6 matches in a row, they were top of the West and everything fell apart. That was 5 matches. This was an entire half of the season that they were easily the best team, and then they never won again. It's unheard of.
At risk of beating a dead horse, I don't understand what's happening, because you watch this team every week and they're running the same system that dominated the Super League throughout the fall and the beginning of winter, and it just didn't work after the break. I've never seen anything like this, if I'm going to be dead honest, and it almost certainly at this point means they're not going to make the playoffs. It's a baffling situation, and I really don't know, how do you position yourself, assuming that they don't make the playoffs, how do you position yourself going into the offseason? How deep do the changes need to be to the roster? Obviously, they need a new coach on a full-time basis, but man, just flummoxing stuff.
This is all setting up for us to have the ultimate meme ending to the year, because they are still tied on points for the 4th playoff spot, that they're going to go winless throughout all of this, except for their final game of the year against a Carolina Ascent team who's already clinched the #1 seed. And they're going to win that match and make the playoffs based off of that one victory.
Or Carolina's just going to score like 9 goals.
Or have a Miami FC against Rhode Island end like they had from last season.
Yeah.
Bless. Well, hey, y'all ready to get into some Jägermeister? I do want to just shout out the USL community for just saying that upsets are called Jaeger bombs. I don't know when that just kind of happened, but shout out to USL Blue Sky /Twitter. Jaeger bombs is incredible. And there's a lot of matches that we can go through with this, and I sort of want to go chronological. I kind of want to just jump around a little bit as well, but I do want to start with the one that started us all off, which is Charlotte taking down North Carolina. What a way to start the Jaeger Cup than a massive Jaeger bomb.
And this was such an interesting matchup because these teams had played like a week prior in the Open. They knew how the other side wanted to play. They obviously, both sides came out with tactical adjustments as a result. Charlotte got the win because they got back to basics. They tried to be a little bit clever with a shape in the Open Cup game where they attacked with a back 4 defense, but then when they defended, they were dropping one of their wingers low into a back 5. This time they just decided it's a straight back 5. We're not going to play games with it. And we're going to allow Christian Cheney and Luis Alvarez to do their thing and be more free up front without everyone having to focus on the complications. And it let them jump out to the lead. They got the penalty from Alvarez quickly thereafter. And having that defensive structure let them see out the game. North Carolina spent 60 minutes on the doorstep, really pushing to try to equalize. And yeah, they got one, but the independents were steady. Nick Spielman and Matt Levy both were standouts at the center of the effort for them. I thought the way Mike Jeffries set this club up was exactly what they needed to go into a tough place to play, get the result, and really position themselves nicely in that group.
Yeah, and this was Charlotte's first victory over their in-state rival since the 10th Fast and Furious film had come out. And like, what a way to at least start out the Jaegermeister Cup, to have a one of a few that will actually come up soon. USL 1 over USL Championship victories in this group stage that I think we're going to start seeing a trend of. And as John had said, I think in his preseason kind of predictions in our 90-50-10s, that we're likely going to see a USL 1 team possibly even winning their group.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this was obviously one of the matches that I said what I said on Blue Sky / Twitter as well. Of championship teams are quickly finding out that the gap is not that big. And I understand that this is one off, but also it's not going to be. We've seen it plenty. This is more than just a cup set where the League One or the championship team massively rotated. Granted, North Carolina rotated a fair amount, not a big amount, but just a little bit. But you would still, if you're a championship brain person, in your head, the gap should be big enough, right? The gap should be big enough between the two leagues so we can rotate a little bit. It's not. It's just not. And yeah, I mean, Charlotte came out with a great game plan. Defensively, they were sound. And we've seen this before when they had Austin Pack. I think it was 2 years ago, where they were absolutely just having Austin Pack just save everything. But they also had Spielman, who was Defensive Player of the Year ? And it was, or who else? What, it was someone in that Charlotte backline anyway. But it was really, they were really good defensively with a good attack going forward as well. They just kind of went back to some of those old roots, and it felt like they were just able to stand strong.
No, absolutely. And this is a team that's run that system previously, and they've got a lot of returning players. Yeah, it's been a 4-2-3-1 in the league mostly, but Charlotte has that level of continuity. They've got the game planning to be able to pull that out when they're facing a team like North Carolina that's so good about going 5 wide, spreading you out, but then using players like Mikey Maldonado to have this cutback option up the middle. Charlotte had the answer for that. And I think few teams do in the USL Championship on a week-to-week basis. That's why it's so encouraging to see Charlotte come out with the game plan and get this result.
Well, I want to kind of, oh, Ryan, did you have some? Okay, cool. Let's go to what I think most people will call the biggest Jaeger bomb of the round, which is FC Naples versus Charleston. Last week, it took a long time for me to answer who was going to win this match, because I just that strongly believe in what FC Naples is doing. And FC Naples showed it. They went down to Naples, Florida. Charleston did. And what Naples does defensively is solid. And just to make sure I do have the goal scorer right, I mean, I'm assuming it's Enderlong because he scores everything.
Yeah, surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I have 2 questions for this early on across both League One and Championship. Is Enderlong the best signing this offseason?
I don't think there's an argument otherwise. Like, he's leading the Golden Boot race. He's scoring major goals in the Jägermeister Cup. There have been impact players, but nobody as big as him.
But you see what Naples has been doing, and the only team to best them is One Knox, and we'll talk about them soon. But Naples looks almost unbeatable at times. When they are playing their game as good as they can be, they go to toe-to-toe and beat, in regular time, arguably the best team in the East, as some people would still believe.
What stood out for me was the way that Naples, almost distinctly from Charlotte, they didn't mess with their strategy at all. They ran the 4-2-3-1 that we've seen all season. They were bold in the way they used Kevin O'Connor to man mark Aaron Malloy in the midfield, where I think most League One sides would look at Charleston and say, forget that, we're sitting deep, 2 holding mids. They wanted to be aggressive. They wanted to force turnovers in the press. And they got a lot of good chances and put Luis Zamudio under pressure because of the way they turned Charleston over and got out on the break. I think the goal scoring sequence where you find Onan out wide, you're able to get him connecting with Luca Pirpa with that 1-2. Then it's the assist to Carson Henderlong. That's Naples' attack at their best. You're leveraging the wide play. You're moving very quickly and directly. There's always a sense of control, and Henderlong is just doing his thing as a number 9 that knows how to move without the ball. It's such a complete team performance. This team is so well coached, so well drilled. I would be shocked not to see them advance from their Jägermeister Cup group at this point.
What stood out to me from this performance was the fact that Naples had won this match off the back of just 26% possession. I mean, this is something Sean Dyche would be like proud of. If you're looking for like just a comparison, the lowest possession ever won a Premier League match was Nottingham Forest over Arsenal at an 18% possession. But like moving forward for Naples right now, they have Alta, Chattanooga, Portland as their next 3 all away from home in the league. And then to get Miami again in their next Jägermeister Cup match, I think that's a match that they could very well be beating Miami in that one. So this could very well be a trendy pick to be a dark horse selection to not only advance from this group, but to make an actual run at this competition.
Yeah, and by the way, I would love to know, Ryan, if you can find it, what the least amount of possession that San Antonio team had and won with, because I feel like they had some low 20s matches as well.
I was down this rabbit hole recently. There was a game San Antonio won where they didn't even attempt 200 passes, and the average team completes 400 a game. They were setting football back by decades, and I loved every second of it.
It was just something else. That team lives rent free in my head because I still don't fully understand how it worked, at all. I do, but I don't.
The phrase mentality monsters, that's an all-time classic, man. That's just the best thing.
I want to ask a question about the Jägermeister Cup because you mentioned it, John. This FC Naples team didn't really change game plan. Obviously, they sat back a lot, clearly, but they weren't exactly hunkering in and parking the bus either. They definitely had to defend a good bit, but still, do you think that with goals for being the tiebreaker, not just overall points, because getting to extra time only gets you 2 points if you win the PKs, right? There's not a whole the incentive is to win it in regular time. Do you think we're actually going to see more cup sets, Jaeger bombs, because League One teams are incentive to win?
It's a good question. I think the format is conducive to that sort of thing. And the way that the goals tiebreaker is set up, you want to be a little bit more open in the way you play. So let's say that you're Naples playing against Miami, and Miami comes in thinking, we're trying to score a lot. That makes them so vulnerable on the counter. And if there's one thing a team like Naples does well, it's hit you out in those quick opportunities. That feels like a model we could see across the board, not just with Naples, but maybe even a Chattanooga, whoever they're playing. They've got the talent to get out and hit you on the break if you're trying to push for goals. It's an interesting balance, and I'm so excited to see how this develops strategically. If a club loses their next game and they're down in the dumps after week 2, do they just go with a rotated squad? How does that affect the standings? So many variables around here that are going to be fascinating competitively.
Yeah, and you look at teams such as Indy 11, such as Rhode Island, who've already put 4 goals on the board, and that's given them a leg up over their competition. I think it's going to be really interesting when we get to the middle of May and June, when those teams who are trying to kind of find their way into better seeding at the top of their group stages, if they kind of just really push forward those additional goals that you would see them see in these games and kind of run up the scoreline on these goals for. And Kaylor, if you are curious, from that San Antonio championship team, it was actually in the cup final. They had their lowest ever possession that won a match, which was at 30% against Louisville.
Really? Only 30? Like they had as much as 30-1? I could have sworn they had a 20s match or two.
I need Alan Marcina to get a job today, man.
I want to take a trip to the most insane match that we had, which was Tampa Bay and Miami. Because, oh my God, it was so insane that I got a notification that Tampa Bay scored a PK a whole day later. So, shout out to that. This was an insane match where Tampa Bay goes up 3, and in the span of the 57th minute, the 61st minute, the 77th minute, it gets tied up. It goes to penalties. The Miami wins. Absolute insane match down in Florida.
Pretty much the embodiment of like the classic tale of two halves sort of game. Early on, Miami sticking to their guns, doing what they do in the league with a very widespread and expansive sort of shape. And Tampa Bay just took their lunch money. Like Ruben Spacius and Manuel Arteaga were eating them alive. Their two-man play was unreal. Coming out of the second half, I don't know if the Rowdies just lost focus. Certainly Miami made some changes, kind of switching into a back four, really focusing on getting Lucas Milano and Sebastian Blanco the ball more often, especially like right out of halftime. Credit to Miami, but man, this Rowdies team cannot catch a break in any of these matches. It's tough to see. Obviously, the shootout, there's some luck involved there, and Bill Hamid is looking like his classic self in that context. But you've come away feeling good for Miami, and if you're a Rowdies fan, more frustration.
Yeah, I mean, credit to a Miami FC team who last season, if they were down 3-0 at halftime, we would have seen them pretty much just kind of roll over and just kind of write the match off. But to come back from being 3-0 down, I'll have to go back through, but I think that has to be their largest ever comeback to at least get a result in a match in club history, or at least in their recent history. But yeah, if you're Tampa Bay, this has to be one just absolute gut punch of a result where you thought everything was going to click, that this was the week that you were going to kind of turn around your season. And we've talked about this in the past, that teams may possibly use the Jägermeister Cup matches, the Open Cup matches, as a way to help kind of propel their league form, to really help improve themselves, almost have this game be like a free hit on their pursuit of a playoff spot. And to go up 3-0 and have to settle for a PK loss has to be absolutely heartbreaking. I will say, however, my dad did wager on Tampa Bay to win, and he got the early payout when they got up 2-0. So it cashed a bet for people. If you wagered on Tampa Bay money line, you still ended up cashing your bet, even if the outcome didn't end up that way.
Incredible. This is also coupled, and this probably actually should have been a headlining news and was not, where apparently St. Pete is looking to tear down Al Lang. This all happens within a couple days of each other. That news gets posted, then this match happens. I mean, it's legit like 1-2 days. That whole thing where St. Pete is looking to tear down Al Lang and then just kind of build on prime real estate, because in the end it is prime real estate. Everything that I've kind of heard is that this is kind of negotiating between Rays Baseball and St. Pete, Tampa Bay, where this is just a small negotiation chip with Rays Baseball, because that is who owns, Tampa Bay. So I don't know if I would read too much into it, because Al Lang is such a just an establishment of lower league soccer and just soccer in general. The one thing that Tampa Bay can hang their hat on is they have arguably the prettiest stadium in all of U.S. soccer. There's no way they would tear that down for nothing.
You would hope not, but it's another factor that even if this doesn't really amount to anything, like you lose your coach, you had the opening month where you're on the road because Al Lang is still under repair. Now you're getting headlines like this. There's just some bad juju around the Rowdies right now that I can't quite escape.
And there's also, just the side of it of We don't really know what their budget is with the hurricane stuff, with what the Rays are tied up in. Like, who knows what they're able to even work with right now. It's definitely interesting to see what kind of moves they can try to make. I think it's very indicative of their situation right now that there's no real smoke to coaches stuff. It seems like they're seriously going to be waiting until the end of the season when there are great prospects out there. I think it's kind of a sign of the financial times for the Rowdies.
And I kind of want to pose the question, if they go with Coleman for the rest of the year, do you think he's got the voice or he's got the authority to make the changes that can get this team back into the playoffs?
Do they even have okay, this is about to be a horribly mean question. When you look at names on paper, they have a talented team in 2022 or 2021, legacy players, serious legacy players. But how many players on this current roster do you believe are good enough to be a playoff team today?
It's a good question. I think the thing for me that if it is going to go right, so much of the formula is going to rely on Blake Bodley and Nick Moon coming back healthy and giving them actual fullbacks. And I think Aaron Guillen and Thomas Venkayazil are good players, useful players. Yep. When they are your starting right and left back, that is a bad situation. Like, that limits you in a lot of major ways. So if those two, Moon and Bodley, former teammates in San Diego even, can come back and do what we know they're capable of, I think the Rowdies have a fighting chance. But if it's like the 2021 back line coming back and not being athletic enough to do the job, I have a hard time envisioning this team rising up.
Yeah, if you're looking at just their next 5 games within the league, I'm more worried that they're going to lose too much ground early before they can even make it up at a kind of mad dash to the finish later half the year. I mean, you never can clinch a playoff spot this early in the season, but you can certainly start losing your chances at a playoff spot this early as well. If you're looking at the Rowdies' next 5 games in the league, that's Birmingham, Charleston, Rhode Island, Lexington, and Louisville. For at least their credit, those first 3 are at home, so they can help kind of like get the ball rolling on some home form. But to have to play Charleston and Louisville in there, and then a Rhode Island team that is finding form, who's won 3 of their last 4 right now, they could really find themselves staring up at the rest of the Eastern Conference very quickly.
And if you're someone who believes in new manager bounces, Birmingham very likely to be one on this upcoming weekend. Keep your eye on that space. Also, quick Miami thing before we move on to some other matches. I've saw it before, and I've noticed it all year long. Bolu Akinyode just being a center back again is just interesting to me, because when he's on his game, he's still one of the best central midfielders this league has to offer, but he's also more than competent as a center back. He's good as a center back, but I just find it really fascinating that they're just rolling him out there still as the center back option.
There was a match, I believe in early April, where they used him as a center mid, and it felt like kind of the moment where Miami figured out what they were trying to do. Akinyode showed a lot of progressivity as a passer even. He was destroying everything in the midfield. And then it's just been center back since then. So he's still got both skill sets in his back pocket. I think he's great when he's leading that back line because Miami wants to be adventurous. They want to be open. They need an organizer who can provide that level of experience. Akinyode is that level of player who's really the key link in the chain for Gaston Madoni and this team.
Well, we've been kind of teasing it for the entire night, so let's go to One Knox, where in front of 6,300, they score some goals. You get some excitement, and after it goes 2-2, you go into pins. One Knox walks out with a 4-2 penalty win, and it was just fun. Tulsa has been one of the, and I know the last week, 2 weeks ago, the Tactics show was about Tulsa, so they're not underloved, but I don't know how many people are truly keeping an eye on them. as a real deal playoff title contender right now. They are a good squad, but one knocks, there's something serious, and they showed it against a really good FC Tulsa team.
You think about the way that One Knox have set themselves up throughout their league slate. It's a midfield trio with one very defensive-minded midfielder and then two number 8 types that are allowed to push up. They strayed from that a little bit in this game. They went with Sievert Hoagley and Abel Caputo, two more defensive-minded players, because they wanted to be able to contest the battle in the midfield with a Tulsa team that is very physical, a Tulsa team that wants to be direct and restart into those areas, win second balls, and go from there. It didn't always work. Tulsa got that early goal because they were able to slice through those central places. But by and large, Ian Fuller got that choice right. It nullified a lot of what makes FC Tulsa such a good team at the championship level. And gradually, Knoxville worked themselves into the match. Mikkel Goling in the midfield still had the ability to get forward. He gets the goal. They looked every bit as good as FC Tulsa for the full 90 minutes. And given what we've seen from them in the league so far, the win over Naples, they feel like a legitimate title contender, if not the title favorite right now.
They currently have my highest ELO ratings in USL 1 at the moment after their win over Naples. But like impressively from this match, they were out shooting Tulsa nearly 2-1 in this fixture. And had it not been for that last minute goal conceded that took it to penalties, they would have been sitting at least level on points with Indy 11 and Birmingham atop their current group stage match in their division. I think if they can get past Indy 11 in a really good fixture of their next Jägermeister Cup match, this could very well be that USL 1 team that wins their group stage.
I just have a question for you really fast. Tulsa side, John. What do you think of Weber breaking, a few transfer records on the way in? I think he's a really good player from what we've seen of him. Obviously, he only gets 45 in this match, but he's a good player. But, I mean, what do you see that Tulsa was willing to splash that much cash for?
I think the ability to flash some athleticism on the wing, but also finish the ball like a proper number 9, having that skill set fills an important spot for this team, because Taylor Calhera can get the goals as the primary striker, but he's somebody with New York City in MLS Next Pro last season, tended to drop a little bit deeper, hold up play, get teammates involved. You see the model instantly when the combination play between Weber and Calhera comes together. That makes sense. It's a big fee. Like, the number reported is close to 500,000 from what I've heard, despite whatever the transfer market valuation says. That's trust in the scouting network, in the vision that Caleb Patterson-Sewell has on the front office side of things. Given the returns we've seen from Tulsa early this season, I'm buying what he's selling in terms of the vision for this team. But if Weber doesn't come good, I think it will not necessarily surprise me. It's something of a crapshoot when you buy players from leagues where you don't really have the prior example and the precedent of how it turns out. But yeah, having seen 15 minutes off the bench in the league and then 45 against Knoxville, he's clearly got the goods, and it's a matter of time before we start to see the results from that more often.
Wait, hold on. I gotta get his name right. Oh my God. He was with El Paso. He was like, they were going to be a coach. Oh my God. He also was with FC Cincinnati. Broke the transfer.
Richie
Ryan. Can you believe that Richie Ryan is still worth $250,000 more than him?
Man, classic Miami FC. Bring that back.
It was so unbelievable. Richie Ryan's a wonderful human and was a quality player, but almost $1 million.
At that point in time, in the context of the NASL, what are we doing? One of the craziest things that's ever happened in American soccer.
It's so good. All right, let's hit really fast. I want to hit what could have been a Jaeger bomb, where Texoma and El Paso, neither team wanted to be there whatsoever. And it went 0-0. And it seemed about right. If that match could have gone 20 rounds of PKs and they all just missed because they did not care, I would not have been shocked.
When you put this game on the docket, I did look at it and be like, do we have to? But I mean, overall, lineup wise, the Locomotive were very much kind of bringing the B plus team. I thought the choice to use center backs Palermo Ortiz and Noah Dolenmeyer at the fullback spots was crazy, and Texoma really did punish them for it a handful of times. Anytime that Leland Gray got going in the midfield, Texoma like genuinely looked dangerous. And Gray's 19 years old. He's somebody who they identified in an open combine. That's awesome to see. But overall, neither team was especially connected. The play felt very choppy. You expect to see better from both of these clubs in the next handful of weeks, hopefully. But this is maybe not what you're going to be throwing up on the highlight reel to advertise the Jägermeister Cup.
This match was certainly one that would fit the bill of this could have been an email.
Yes.
I literally just wanted to talk about, I mean, Texoma gets a point, which if we're being completely honest with ourselves, if you asked us anonymously, hey, give your point predictions for each group, Texoma probably walks away with a unanimous 0.
Yeah, the median there would have been 0 for sure.
They're like, they get a point. So good for Texoma. Really bad for El Paso. Just, you're getting the worst team in the competition. You got to walk away with 3 points. You cannot walk away with 2. At the very least, they score a wonder goal and it's 1-1 somehow going into PKs. It cannot be a match I've seen in a long, long time. It cannot happen.
The thing I do like in this game is that Texoma gives Javier Garcia a start, somebody who played under Wilmer Cabrera for Rio Grande Valley, then moved to El Paso and was briefly under Cabrera again. That was fun, and he did well in the face of a number of shots on target. But yeah, that's about all I got on this one.
I mean, Texoma is at least currently right now in Group 2, ahead of both the League One and Championship League winners from last year. Never mind that Colorado Springs hasn't played a Jägermeister Cup match yet. I do want to give credit to Texoma for, at some point, they are ahead of both champions.
Just really fast, this was not on the docket. Nuhu deserved a better result than he got. Dang it, he stood on his head. He was so good.
Great game from him against a New Mexico team that is looking increasingly awesome.
So while we have CFC, Detroit City versus Pitt. This was a fun one. This was very interesting. You did a little bit of writing, and hey, people read it because they mentioned we got a message about it. He hadn't scored with his head yet. It's 1-0 to DCFC.
This was another game that was kind of a tale of two halves. Pittsburgh coming out very aggressive, tilting the pitch in the way that they're pressing. It was an interesting lineup, partially fueled by injuries for Bob Lilly, where the strike pair is Danny Griffin and Aiden O'Toole, who I would label them both as defensive midfielders, if we're being honest, but Lilly gonna Lilly. And it let them press very effectively. They controlled possession early on. And then they got to the final third and no one was making runs in behind. The final ball was lacking. Kind of what you expect using two defensive midfielders as your strike pair. And Detroit learned from the first half. They came out more direct, willing to play over those aggressive players. I thought Ben Morris coming into the game did really well to connect play between the lines. And Darren Smith, the guy is so good, amazing moving without the ball. Of course, I write the piece where I say, oh, he's not really heading the ball much, and then he gets the headed winner. But credit to him because he can finish in a ton of different ways, and it is the difference maker for a Detroit team that, as we know, has always been defensively elite, but has lacked that offensive weapon. If Smith keeps this up, we're looking at a fundamentally more competitive version of Detroit that deserves attention.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit's only blemish on the year is taking a defeat against Louisville, who I think we would all say is pretty much a top 2 team in the league at most times, more often than not. But when I saw like this matchup, like this was always going to be under 2.5 goals for both Detroit and Pittsburgh. I mean, Detroit now after this match has gone the runtime of Titanic since they last conceded a goal. But I did at least post this question and Titanic.
Which one? Which Titanic?
The movie Titanic with Leo and Winslet. Okay. Holding her over the edge of the boat. Yeah.
Were there multiple Titanic films?
Wasn't there an earlier one? Wasn't there one before that one?
Shrug.
I do at least want to. I posed this question in my most recent, my most recent article that I had posted. But it's interesting that we saw Detroit going up against a Pittsburgh kind of Bob Lilly team. That is it possible that we're seeing a more kind of modernized version of Lilly ball, just kind of what Detroit has been playing?
I mean, I could see that personally, especially with how and I know it's been a couple years now, but seeing how it transformed from Trevor James to Danny Dichio, I could see where that comes to be, especially this year or two of Danny Dichio. I think what I'm seeing that you normally saw with Lilly ball is that you have like a superstar striker that was not really a superstar before that year, and then just suddenly they're gold. That this was always a solid defensive team under James, but who was going to score the goals was the question. That's where I see the parallels is who's going to be the star striker, who's going to score the goals. We don't see any goal scorer, and they just kind of create them. I can absolutely see this be a more modern version of Lilly ball.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about the defense first identity, you think about the way that they can control a match in terms of territory more than possession. Those are very much aspects that you associate with Bob Lilly. I think the interesting thing for me is that this team isn't overly aggressive in the press. And I think Pittsburgh kind of can lean that way. And they've been more aggressive year over year, Detroit. Like this team is noticeably trying to win the ball back in higher areas. But yeah, I think the overall comparison is pretty apt between kind of one style that Bob Lilly has used over and over again in a Detroit team that's kind of taken the baton and running with it and doing different things and becoming a little bit more modern in the way they execute on it.
You kind of mentioned that Pittsburgh does more of the kind of counter-pressing thing. I think another thing is Pittsburgh at a lot of times would be very low block. They would have a high like line of engagement if you're someone who plays like Football Manager and like to see the lines. They would play a high line of engagement, but they would also sit really deep. I don't see as much of that low block from Detroit. They can do it, but they don't like to sit as deep. So maybe that's another thing that's slightly different, but it's definitely, I think it's the most comparable to teams that you have in the league easily.
Yeah.
Let's see. I had a couple more that were somewhat interesting. Last one, Spokane versus Oakland, where Oakland had gotten pretty warm. They gotten some results. But if you asked us preseason who's going to win, Spokane or Oakland, I think we all would have said Spokane purely because of what they were building and what Oakland had kind of lost and misbuilt. So this is not a surprising result, but still a very nice moment for the Velocity.
The thing that stands out, well, I mean, I guess context-wise, even before that, Oakland had done very well in the league recently by pressing aggressively and letting Bayarahunga push forward from the central midfield, and then just being hyper fluid in the way they attack you with that front line. Like it's been a lot of Wolfgang Prentice goals, but it's because the front three can interchange so effectively. I thought Spokane stayed so disciplined at the back. Like David Garcia and Cameron Miller didn't put a foot wrong, essentially. Meanwhile, Andre Lewis and Jack Denton combined to complete, I think, like 80 something passes with 5 or 6 incompletions in the face of the Oakland press. Spokane never got flustered. They played their game. Eventually, they were able to work into Derek Waldeck and Pierre Reedy and punish Jurgen Dahm with those overloads, and that made the difference. Love seeing Anwar Pelaez get the goal against his former club. Everything about this from Spokane really went to script and was a kind of evidential of the way that their model can beat teams like Oakland that are fully respectable at the championship level.
What I am very excited about for Spokane in this kind of Jägermeister group stage is on July 26th, that same kind of final weekend of it, Spokane will be hosting Sacramento Republic in a match that could very well be deciding who's going to be winning this group or kind of deciding at the top of this group. But like if you're Oakland, you have to dislike making trips to the state of Washington because you get knocked out by Tacoma Defiance in the Open Cup. You lose this match to Spokane. It like credit to Oakland for getting that 2-0 victory over Orange County last time out, but you're looking still at this Oakland side, and with Sacramento, San Antonio, North Carolina, and New Mexico as your next 4 games, it is still a very tough opening slate of matches.
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at this one, and I kind of had to watch this one the day after because, well, I mean, you know, it gets late early, you know what I'm saying? And so I watched this one the next day, and Spokane just felt smothering at times defensively. And they did this at the end of last year, and I started getting a little bit worried that we were getting a little bit of, can I say a little bit of Rhode Island of, is that team who this team is, right? Because we saw Rhode Island catch fire, and this year they have not been the same team, although they have made a lot of improvements over the last week. But, you know, they are not quite the same team. We started to see that defensive solidity come back. I believe in what I'm seeing. And so I think that what you're seeing out of Spokane is very, very real. To just go ahead, raising anchor. I'm sorry. But I do think that maybe Rhode Island might have cast some demons versus Westchester. It felt like a lot of the things that were going way wrong were going really well, that maybe they just needed one match where they fixed it for things to go right.
That's what it felt like for me, having seen them execute the style in action. Extremely composed in the way they change between phases. Defensively, Rhode Island rolled out a 4-2-3-1. Quazera was the proper right winger, and Aldair Sanchez was playing left back in a tough matchup against Jonathan Bolaños, no less. And he was completely confident in the way he defended and took on that responsibility, but then pushed forward into what became a 3-2-5 attacking shape. So you saw the transitions, and they were executed perfectly. Having Quazera in better spots in the final third, he's automatically able to take players on and not have to worry about, oh, as soon as there's a turnover, I got to get back. I thought that helped him immensely. Defensively, Grant Stoneman was so good against JC Obregon. And Obregon has really grown as a player this season in terms of what he does, dropping in, doing not pure false nine things, but aspects of it. Stoneman never let that happen, nor did the whole Stade pivot. It's a different sort of style, maybe, than the one we saw in 2024 when this Rhode Island team went all the way to the championship game. But the identity is still there. A lot of the core is still there. This felt like a match that they really exercised some demons. And I think it's perfect timing given that they're going to be moving into Tidewater Landing, Centerville Bank Stadium this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, by the way, I believe it was Raising Anchor. I jumped in on their pod, or I wasn't on the podcast, but I was like in the live chat. and they were talking about set pieces being an issue. That was going to be this week's set piece show, but I just never really figured out a way to get it all in there, and just kind of lost motivation. I'll be completely honest, but Rhode Island does something really weird defensively with set pieces where they keep someone on the near post. They keep a player on the near post, but they put no one on the back post because what they want is Coque Vegas to collect the ball in the air, essentially. They want Coque to be the back post defender. But every time they've been caught out on set pieces, and it's been 3 times this year, and they've been under danger, the ball has come in. Well, one of them was Cal Jennings just out muscling somebody and scoring at the near post. What can you do? 2 of them, though, have been ball goes through the near post and ends up back post somehow via deflection or a header across, and no one's there. And it's a really interesting thing that if teams could practice, and they can practice it, but if they could execute flicking the ball across, and I believe it was El Paso who's done that a good bit as well, where they can flick the ball across to the back post. Coque Vegas is trying to attack the ball at the near post. He's leaving the back post wide open. That's something to keep your eye on. I would be very fascinated. And the mention of ball watching, I don't think it's ball watching. I think it's coached. I genuinely do. I think they are told to stay off of the back post at all cost because nobody drops to the line when the deflected ball comes through. That looks coached to me because that's happened so many times. It looks like it's on purpose. I think that they want Coque to be the back post guy. Everybody else staying tall in the box. I don't know. And I would love maybe if Kano or somebody hears this can tell me I'm wrong. That's the way it looks like it's on film to me. That it looks very coached to me. Do not go to the back post. That's Coque. You find a man. I don't know. But yeah. Let's see. There was a couple. Oh, congratulations to Hartford and Peniotu. Going to the other side of Clamico, by the way, hilarious. He doesn't have a choice. It's a loan, but hilarious. And then getting the dumbest yellow card, second yellow I've ever seen. Just whatever.
2 goals, get sent off, talk about a debut. That is what we love to see.
The Eric Lamela special.
That's right.
I did see a couple of Rhode Island fans just being like, he's a traitor. He didn't have a choice. He's just going wherever he's told to go. But hey, seriously, good for Hartford. And I keep coming back to what, John, I think you wrote about at one point. Maybe it was backheeled. There's no bad teams in the championship this year, and it's awesome. This Rhode Island team a few years ago, if there were MLS2 teams, is fighting easily for a playoff spot. And instead, they are towards the bottom. But they had a really good showing against Hearts of Pine, who had absolutely owned Hartford up until this point. A 4-0 win in preseason, and then they go out on the U.S. Open Cup. Hartford absolutely exercised some demons this weekend.
I was so impressed watching Peniotu and Samuel Carriaga do their thing in the midfield. Say what you will about Hartford and how poor they've been, and a lot of that comes down to the lack of having anything in possession. Like, it's a heck of a lot of long balls into Galena and to Jiang up top. This was the first time they've had players that can pass through you, interchange, be clever. And we know that Portland is organized. We know that they can press well. Hartford showed actual poise in the face of that. And that feels like a meaningful improvement for a team that needed that presence badly.
Yeah, and this is a Hartford team who's won back-to-back games across all competitions for the first time since October, back-to-back games at home across all competitions since August. So, I mean, they really needed this result to come away with a victory here over a Portland team who, by the way, is still searching for their first win in 90 against USL opposition. So it'll be another kind of interesting story to follow along.
We are getting long, so I just want to kind of throw this out there. If there's any of you guys, if there's anything from Lexington versus Loudoun, Ford Madison versus Indy, Louisville versus Richmond, easy for me to say, We already kind of mentioned New Mexico versus Omaha, Orange County versus Las Vegas, Phoenix Rising, San Antonio, Sacramento, AV Alta, or Birmingham, Chattanooga. If there's anything from those matches that you want to just kind of throw out there, open floor. Go for it.
The one quick note from the Louisville game, Brian Ownby coming back from the long ACL recovery, getting minutes, but also doing it against his old club in Richmond. Very cool moment to see for him. A player I think we all really love to watch. So,
thank you, Loudon, for the money line victory for your 90+ 6-minute goal. I was this close to cashing out, but I was just like, there's going to be some Loudon magic in this one. And they get the 1-0 victory over a Lexington team who, yeah, we still have a lot of question marks around.
And the Loudon goal from Joshua Erlinson, whose brother Jacob has been a stellar defender the last 2 years. They kind of just needed a center back on a 25-day contract. So they bring in his brother, and here he is scoring the big goal when it matters. Love to see it.
I had something, but I totally don't remember anymore. Oh gosh. That's so tough. The Chattanooga, Birmingham, just want to quickly throw it out there. Despite it being down a man or being up a man versus Chattanooga, the ball that Trejo played to Damas for the last goal was just gross. It was disgusting.
It's kind of what you were hoping to see. Like, this felt like a weekend with a lot of cathartic breakthrough moments. Maybe that was such a moment for the Legion.
San Antonio, Phoenix, another one that I just want to throw out there. Just a gritty, grimy match. I got on Instagram at one point today, and there was a video that showed a video of Juan Agudelo and Victor Wembanyama doing like the same play. It was like San Antonio and the like FC and the Spurs had like did a collab, and they're like, it's the same play, and it was just Wemby going 1v5 and does just a step back.
Okay, that's good.
I was like, this is awesome. This is the best.
Did you guys see the video of Wemby playing soccer as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Line him up, San Antonio FC.
Could you imagine? It's 95th minute in the Western Conference Final. In comes Victor Wembanyama for a corner. Now I needed to see. I wanted to see him on the field. I don't care. Just make him stand. Who's the tallest guy on that team? Would it be Alex Cronale? Probably. He would probably dwarf him. Alex is like 6'6", and Victor is what, 7'4"? Taller?
He's not human.
Bless. Any final thoughts, USL side from you guys?
I love having League One and Championship teams play, which is a dumb thought, but like it's just very fun to see matchups that we're not used to be official and competitive and count towards something.
Let's see. I completely agree. Having the League One Championship segments just be combined and just having these fun conversations, it's a blast. We usually only get this in US Open Cup, and the fact that it's just a regular fixture for now is great. I love this.
Yeah.
Ryan, you have any extra USL thoughts?
You're on mute if you do.
Rest.
I was searching just because I wanted to fact check it. Wembanyama has about a foot on Alex Cronale.
That's gross.
Insane.
I look up to Alex, by the way. Like, I'm 6'1", and I'm having to like crane my neck.
Crazy.
Raising Anchor did ask who are the projected wild cards. This does go to goal differential, correct? That it's the highest points.
It's the highest points goals scored.
That's not, and then the goals scored.
Yeah.
I think it's too early to even be looking at stuff like that at the moment, but we'll see. Chances are, if I had to guess, look at the teams that have the most teams in their division. Look at the biggest divisions. There's more points to gain, I guess. I don't know. Well, I guess there's not. It's all 4-4. It doesn't matter.
Everyone
Does
plays
it?
the same. Yeah.
That's one thing I
currently
want.
the wild card teams are Birmingham and Hartford.
Exactly who you think coming into this Jaeger Cup.
Yeah, Hartford, even though I like what they're doing, they are not going to win a goal scored tiebreaker. I'll tell you that.
Penny02 no, he'll be suspended for the next game. Never mind.
King.
That sucks. Anyway, how about some final thoughts for the night, Ryan?
Yeah, Andor season 2 has just been phenomenal. There's another 3-episode batch that's come out at least tonight. So looking forward to diving into that for tomorrow. Thunderbolts later on this week, and then the Righteous Gemstones season finale or series finale actually as well. So that's another one to look forward to.
Yeah, Ryan and I are like sitting here like we're drug addicts, like shaking when you get to Andor at the end of this podcast. I just kind of want to shout out the folks at Westchester who, I mean, were so accommodating to me, treated me very nicely, hooked me up with some merch. I am very bullish on what they're doing up there. Rome wasn't built in a day, and what they had on day one was already pretty impressive. And to see how that's going to flourish over the course of this season and heading into future years, nothing but exciting. So yeah, amazing.
That was super cool. There was just pictures, by the way, that just kind of showed up. It's like, took a picture with John Morrissey, and I was just like, whoa, that's crazy. First off, but yeah, it was super cool.
Having people come up to me like, can I have a picture with you was such a weird experience. Yeah.
You're famous. We're
in one corner of the internet, I suppose.
Hey, we'll take it. We'll take that rent-free area of the internet. That's what we do, right? Let's see. I do love cooking shows. I get way into cooking shows. However, they had another version of this on the Food Channel. I think it was Food Channel, Food Network, whatever. And it's like a 24 and 24 where the cooks have to stay up for 24 hours and do all these different challenges. And that's genuinely insane to me. I don't know how people find enjoyment from watching someone suffer from sleep deprivation and use knives near their hands like that. That freaks me out.
That's what I was going to say. Like, that's a health risk, man. You're going to chop something off.
I don't know. Apparently, it was good enough to have season 2, so enough people watched it. I don't know who did. Whatever. Ooh. The reason I bring that up is because I thought today was the spring baking championship episodes. I thought that was coming out today, but it was not. It was 24 and 24, which everybody's in on.
Amazing.
So, well, hey, listen, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for following along. Who watches the segmented versions? It might be a little late this week. I have a hectic week, so who knows when I'll get it edited. It will eventually be edited, but just listen to the podcast. Listen to the full version. It's an hour and 18 minutes of greatness, obviously. So thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate you. And for the first and final time tonight.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist Podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.